Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Street News Network. Um, I appreciate you guys always coming into the stream. I hope everyone's doing good today. Um, just a reminder at the start, if you guys could please email Street News Network 16@gmail.com to send in your clips so you guys can be featured on the streams. Today we're going to be going over the court case that just recently started with President Trump versus Oregon, and to see if what's going to happen. We're going to read some of the court documents and try and make sense of what's going on between President Trump and Oregon and who is likely to win the case. So let's get started.
It's a dumb question. It meant no.
President Trump immediately appealing the Oregon judicial takeover and responding about what's coming next. And so we've got this appeal that you can see is fresh out of the oven. It's an emergency motion submitted by the attorneys at the Civil Division out in California, or that region, saying now we're in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that covers Oregon, California, and a bunch of other states out there. So it's Oregon versus Donald Trump. And we've got some background on this. We're going to go into this opinion because this is an appeal, rather a motion from the DOJ to try to stop the lower level judge, which is this woman. This judge, her name is Karen or Karen, or, sometimes the Karens, if you spell it that way, they get all agitated. Like, oh.
So yeah, that judge ruled that it was not okay for Trump to send in the National Guard to Portland amid the crisis that's been going on between protesters and ICE, and whether or not the police in that city is going to start helping out more, or to at least police the area more, or if the National Guard is going to come through, or more federal agents to police the area more. So we will see.
Oh, hey, Karen. They're like, it's Karen. Jerk, you're going to jail now, right? So she's a judge. So she is the judge who issued the lower level ruling. Of course, she's on the FISA court as well, which is just perfect. But she's the judge for the District of Oregon. And she was appointed by President Trump to that position after having come up under George Bush. And she was actually involved in the interview of Monica Lewinsky against Clinton. So she's been around a while. And she issued this decision that basically said, Trump, you cannot bring in the National Guard from anywhere, from California. You can't activate.
This case involves the intersection of three of the most fundamental principles in our constitutional democracy. First, it's the relationship between the federal government and the states. The second concerns the relationship between the United States and armed forces and domestic law enforcement. Third concerns the proper role of the judicial branch in ensuring that the executive branch complies with the laws and limitations imposed by the legislative. And then it goes on to outline why she says that he issued a memorandum broadly authorizing federalization of National Guard service members under 10 USC 12406.
Them from Oregon. You can't bring them in from Texas. You can't do anything. All right. You're basically cut off. I'm the president now. She issued the ruling. The appeal is going up to the Ninth Circuit. Before we get to the appeal, let's set the mood with a little Stephen Miller, who's explaining what is actually going on out there and why the National Guard need to be deployed.
Do you have any idea how much of ICE's workforce and resources have had to be reprioritized? How much of the Joint Terrorism Task Force's resources have had to be reprioritized to fight these domestic terrorists? Do you have any idea how many resources are spent
you keep
trying
calling
to
them
hunt
terrorists,
down and track
but isn't that hyperbolic to call them terrorists?
What is no? If anything, I'm understating the severity of the situation. What issue was more central in 2024 than turning back the border invasion? And since the day we came in, ICE officers have been subjected to a nonstop campaign of physical violence and harassment every single day. And outside the Portland field office in particular, every night they come, they assemble, they fight.
Do you guys agree with what ICE is doing right now, or do you disagree? I think they're doing a decent job. I feel like they need to find a way to maybe get the public more on their side, but I feel like just because they're working for Donald Trump, that most likely the public was still going to find a way to hate them. And then I do not mind people going out and exercising their First Amendment right, but when it comes to blocking police cars and interrupting police duties, I mean, I've bet people on this channel have seen the cop watching before. They get upset if you're just sitting on a sidewalk with a camera sometimes. So to go and block ICE vehicles and then and then they don't understand why ICE is acting the way they're acting towards them, it doesn't make sense to me. You can scream, you can stand out there on the sidewalk and scream all you want, but when you start blocking the road and blocking the entrance to the government building, and then the city police doesn't come and do anything, like, what are you going to do? I don't know what they expect them to do about that. Just let them sit there all day?
Right? They try to impede movement. They physically attack. For what purpose? Because we had an election, Boris. We had one. What's the purpose? To use
Stephen,
actual physical violence to change the result of the election. To say you cannot turn back the border invasion. Do you have any idea how many resources we have had to redesignate to deal with these street terrorists?
All right, and he's going to continue to explain what's happening out there, but here is what is happening. And so you can see this is outside of one facility. This was posted by Imeme, therefore.
So I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about January 6th, but my thing is, how many times can they come out and obstruct government official proceedings or just anything that the government's doing before it's considered the same? They've done violence towards officers. Officers have been shot this year. Police cars have been torched. It's just because it wasn't on January 6th, does it make it okay for what they're doing? That's all I want to know.
I am. Over on X, he says, this happened yesterday in Portland. Violent mob of 250 rioters attacked federal law enforcement, launching fireworks, aiming lasers into officers' eyes to try to blind them, and storming an ICE field office. This wasn't a protest. It was an orchestrated assault on federal agents. And it's happening because Democrat leaders keep fueling this insanity with their reckless anti-law enforcement rhetoric, and they're not doing anything to stop it.
Wow, that's just wild. Oh my goodness. That would have been loud as hell. The thing that bothers me, if you watch mainstream media, they make it seem like they were just out there peaceful. They weren't agitating. They weren't being rowdy, they weren't being a nuisance, they weren't breaking any what do they call it, sound laws, and then they act like the police just march out here on their own and just start shooting stuff at them like this. That doesn't make any sense. But then there's clear videos, you can see there's tons of activists who've gone out there and filmed, who've been attacked, or they surround them. The other day they were burning a flag. And then it caused the whole incitement and it started getting more dangerous. So I just wish the media would be more transparent to what's actually going on out there. All they say is, it's just one block, Well, if it's just one block, it should be easy to clean up and police and keep order. They're dressed up, ready to stand there and cause trouble. Most of them, they're all
creators. I built these 3 apps to run my business just using prompts with base 44.
Insane.
Yeah, it looks like a war zone out there, as Stephen Miller said, and they're throwing fireworks and incendiaries and explosives at police officers. And I don't remember, did the January 6ers throw a bunch of fireworks at police officers? I don't think so, but they called that an insurrection. That was federal property. These are ICE agents at federal property. This has been an ongoing onslaught for nights and nights, days on
about
end.
9 months they said this has been going on?
Just like the summer of love during the BLM psychopathy, that it's fiery but mostly peaceful, so just leave it alone. So with that backdrop, let's get into the appeal. Okay, so the judge said, Trump, you can't deploy the National Guard from anywhere, from any states, at any place, anytime. I'm the president now. And here's what Trump's DOJ is saying in response. They write, this is an emergency motion, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. We need an immediate stay. We need to deploy these National Guard troops to protect our officers. All right, Ninth Circuit, we're trying to save our society and deport illegal aliens here without being attacked by goons on the streets. This district court has entered entered an extraordinary order from Immergut, countermanding the president's decision to call forth the National Guard to protect federal officers in Portland from violent attacks, to protect federal officers and other property. Now, this court should stay this lower order, okay? So stop her from stopping us, and should also grant an immediate stay so that our order.
So he's trying to justify this under U.S. Code 10 U.S. Code 12406. And it says, whenever the United States or any commonwealths or possessions is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation, there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. So I'm thinking it's going to be the clause 2 and 3 here, the rebellion against the authority of the government, because under Trump administration, they're saying we're enforcing these certain federal laws. And then also the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. I think that might fall under that as well, because we've seen time and time mayors saying they will not help ICE enforcement and they will not do anything to help them. I don't know if you guys heard the police dispatch the other day for what happened in Chicago, where they told them not to go. And then also Mayor Brandon Johnson literally said he's setting up ICE-free zones and did an executive order to make it so private companies can basically discriminate against ICE.
And Trump's executive order and the deployment go into effect. And this court, by the way, you've already done this before, okay? You did this in LA, where we had the power. Now, under U.S. code, under the law, this is U.S. statute, so Congress passes these laws. The president is authorized to federalize the National Guard.
I was reading that.
Unable with regular forces, now quoting the law, to execute the laws of the United States. Or if there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion, which that certainly looked like,
because we're certainly not being invaded, so he can't use that law for that. But the other two,
people. Portland, LA, these sanctuary cities are the epicenter of the illegal alien invasion. They've got all these services. We were paying for it. They were flooding the zone. And now ICE is there acting to remove them. So they are obstructing their work. They're rebelling against their authority, throwing fireworks at them. You can see them exploding behind their backs. And that video was reposted by Rapid Response 47. So they endorsed its source and shared it on their timeline. Now, both conditions apply in Portland. Over the past several months, agitators have assaulted federal officers with rocks, bricks, pepper spray, and incendiary devices, and threatened federal personnel at their work. And if Trump's FBI and DOJ was anything like as just, ruthless, which we'd like to see maybe a little bit more out of, as the Biden DOJ, these people would have been rounded up immediately for insurrection or whatever.
That's the scary part about it. So these people wait outside these ICE facilities all day. Eventually, these federal workers have to go home. That's the crazy part. Like it says right here, I've followed federal workers to their homes, doxed them online, and threatened to kill them on social media because they consider them Nazis in the Gestapo. So why wouldn't? That's the thing about that rhetoric. It's like you call someone a Nazi. Like, don't we consider them to be one of the worst people in history? Doesn't that kind of stoke violence in a way, in my opinion? It's like, if there's a true Nazi, it's like you're not okay here. But that's over 70 million people who they consider Nazis, which is wild.
Made up stupid charge that they want to charge them with. They can make one up, just like they did with the J6ers. 1512C, obstruction of documents. Imprison and lock up a bunch of people for made up charges that were reversed. And of course, I'm not condoning that, but I'm just saying maybe they could find another basis and hire some more prosecutors and go kick their doors in for actually throwing incendiary devices at federal law enforcement officials. Now, they have followed federal officers to their homes. They're doxing them online. They're threatening to eliminate them on social media. They have also seriously damaged a federal building. They broke windows, security equipment. They blockaded the entrance. And so these violent actions, Ninth Circuit, which local law enforcement officials have been unwilling or unable to control, impede the ability of ICE and other federal officials to enforce federal law, and they constitute a rebellion. Now, although the violence is somewhat...
I like to read comments and put... you misspelled it, so I can put it up. So Bear said the FBI needs to do their jobs and actually investigate and arrest the morons making those threats of violence online instead of waiting for something to happen. Exactly. You shouldn't just give it a pass. And like, for some reason this year, it's like, especially on TikTok, I don't really go on there, but whenever I do see these like outraged people like talking and saying this crazy stuff, it's on TikTok. All these people, and they're just they hate Trump so much that there's nothing that they'll agree with or even attempt to work with them for. Just like what's going on with the government shutdown right now. Like, they're not going to be able to work that. I don't even know how they're going to work this out. I feel like they're like I was talking with my mom about it the other day, because they say like, oh, the far left isn't the main part of the Democrat Party, but I think the far left is becoming the main part of the Democrat Party, and then they claim that the far right, which would be white supremacists or neo-Nazis, are the main part of the right, which is like far from true if you actually look at it both sides evenly. So I don't know, the biggest voices in the Democrat Party right now, you can consider them far left. A lot of them are democratic socialists, like AOC, Jasmine Crockett. I'm not sure about Hakeem Jeffries, but they definitely, the fringe left has a hold on the left more than the fringe right has a hold on the right. That's just my opinion.
The past month. That's only because we've deployed more forces from the feds. But this has become unsustainable. Now, in concluding that the law's conditions were not satisfied, the judge said, well, I know Congress gave you that power, but there were some conditions on that power. This lower level judge is impermissibly second guessing the commander-in-chief's military judgments, and she's not elected the president, something district courts lack the authority and the competence to do. Nearly 200 years ago, the Supreme Court made it very clear. These judgment calls are for the president to make, not a governor, and certainly not a federal court. The judge doesn't know what the hell's going on, at a minimum, or have the authority to rectify that. It's not her job. Now, at a minimum, as a stay panel of this court explained, courts must give a great level of deference to the president's determination that one of the condition exists if the president makes that decision. He's in a better position to make that decision because he's, the president. And the president here had more than ample grounds to determine that regular forces were unable to sufficiently protect the feds because the conditions.
And one other reason, wait, hold on. Bear said, well, people seem to forget that what they see with the fringe groups is the loudest, not the majority. Exactly. But that was the point I was trying to make, is I'm not sure about that on the left anymore. I'm not sure. Because if just think about it. If someone on the right was to go out and just say some crazy fringe stuff, the left is going to be yelling at the right to condemn it. The right will do the same, but the left just hasn't been condemning it this year. They've been encouraging people to go out.
In Portland rose to the level of a danger or a rebellion. Now, where ongoing threats of violence and harassment aimed at interfering with enforcement of federal immigration laws have stretched the regular forces beyond their capacity, the president can do this. He can call up the Guard in response to the acute dangers.
So yeah, with that, so like just how I guess the executive order making Antifa what's it called, a domestic terrorist group, so say, whatever that. I wonder what they really mean by that. Domestic. I mean, I already know, obviously I know what a terrorist is, but what do they consider a domestic terrorist? It says a domestic terrorist is a person who engages in violent criminal acts inside their own country to advance ideological goals. Okay. Their activities are meant to intimidate a civilian population or influence government policy, but they do not act under the direction of a foreign power. Got it. So I guess you could consider Antifa and what they've been doing lately, because they are trying to enforce their ideology on the world by going out and doing these mass protests, and a lot of them have had violent tendencies in there. I'm not saying every single one has been violent, but if it even turns to the point where the cops need to come out and disperse the crowd, then obviously you guys are not they're not taking it seriously to the point to where they're policing their own people to not do stupid stuff. if it breaks down to that.
And deal with it. So the lower level judge's order, it improperly impinges on the commander-in-chief's
So that's why I feel
supervision
like
of the
they might
military. It
actually win
countermands
this
a
appeal.
specific military directive,
Off
and
of
it
that, and
endangers
if they
federal
can prove there
personnel and their
was-
property. So we have to
If they can prove there was any Antifa there, I think they might win this appeal. I really do think so. Because then that would be there were domestic terrorists there at the ICE facility. The Portland police has not been properly addressing that. So now he's going to make the claim, in my opinion, that this is why I need to send in federal troops, because there's domestic terrorists. The Portland Police Department isn't necessarily helping. And that's kind of true. I watched the video where a person got assaulted, called the police at the spot, and the police made them walk all the way around the building down the block instead of coming there and enforcing anything. And this was in Portland.
Balance the harms, and they weigh strongly in favor of granting us relief. Now, we want a stay no later than today, and a stay pending appeal no later than October 10th, rather. And they oppose this, and they're going to file a response immediately. So all of this is happening rapidly. Here's the background. You know, the Constitution of the United States authorizes Congress to raise and support a national army and to organize the militia. Now, exercising that authority, and you can just look that up, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15, clear as day militia. Now, exercising that authority, Congress created the National Guard. And the National Guard is composed of state National Guard under the command of several states and under the provision of a federal entity. And once called into federal service, members of the National Guard shift, they swap from state militia during their period of active duty. So they become federalized. And they serve under the president as the commander-in-chief. Now, Congress has granted the president authorities under which he may call forth the National Guard if these conditions are met. Here's what they say. Whenever, 2, there is a rebellion or danger of a rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. They're attacking a federal building because the federal building is exercising its authority. The president, or 3, is unable with regular forces to execute the laws. He can't continue these deportations where they're throwing fireworks at their heads. So he can bring them in to suppress the rebellion and to execute those laws. Pretty clear. Even this judge should be able to read this and figure it out, but she couldn't. So here's the background from Trump's DOJ. They write to the Ninth Circuit. All right, Ninth Circuit. Throughout the summer, ICE has seen a sharp and violent increase in protests and attempts to impede its duties enforcing the national immigration laws. In fact, in LA, violent mobs attacked federal officers with concrete chunks, commercial-grade fireworks, and rocks, and they used dumpsters as battering rams to breach federal buildings. Last week, a man opened fire on ICE, killing 2 detainees and injuring another. ICE's facility, also located in downtown Portland, has experienced significant unrest targeting the facility itself. Officers have feared for their safety. In one of the most significant incidents, agitators marched over to Portland, lobbed rocks and sticks, and one protester even wielded a firearm. Now, at the same time, they launched M80 fireworks, they launched mortars, and more. To ensure their safety, officers were forced to barricade themselves inside the ICE facility. They were only able to escape after special tactical units were deployed, and they made use of armored vehicles. Several officers suffered injuries during this incident of mob violence. And it's weird, like,
so the thing I wanted to show, because we just had the executive order stating about the flag and how, and it's not just if you go to outside your house and burn a flag. It's more or less like doing stuff like this out in public, especially in front of the federal building where things are already very inflammatory.
It's an American flag. They set it on fire. Nick won't have it. Nick won't have it.
Like, if you're burning a flag and then people are now upset and acting like this, wouldn't that be
Back!
Hey, you guys, keep it peaceful! Come on, baby! I want you to round up! Hell no!
Anyways, back to the video.
Like, you know, Anderson Cooper's not out there like, this is the greatest threat to our democracy since the Civil War. Now, this incident is far from isolated.
Pretty
Officers
Janus.
have been bitten, kicked, shot with paintball guns, threatened with machetes and knives, assaulted with potentially blinding lasers. Protesters have assembled a mock guillotine. Oh my gosh, just like the intelligence agencies did on January 6th. Wow. And they have directly threatened officers' lives. Do we ever find out who made that guillotine? He's gone with the wind also, right? Just like the pipe bomber. Officers' personally identifiable information has been gathered and publicly released. police. They're doxing them so that they can be shot and killed. And it has become commonplace for officers to be followed after leaving their work. Indeed, officers are regularly trapped in their cars when entering and leaving federal property. And on multiple occasions, we had to use pepper spray to disperse the crowds. And property is also under attack as well, judges. Protesters repeatedly tried to burn it down, the Portland ICE office, burn the whole building down, endangering federal property and more. In one incident, a protester lit a flare and set fire to materials piled against the office. The mob then piled on additional tinder, attempting to stoke the flames. In another incident, protesters burned the American flag on the ICE office's driveway, and they lit an incendiary device next to that building's guard shack. Again, threatening to start a fire that would destroy property and endanger lives, night after night. Separately, protesters have thrown rocks at the buildings. They've damaged the main gate, card readers, security cameras. They're trying to breach the facility, and they're causing significant security risks. They've also poured motor oil over.
By the way, the things with them throwing stuff at the building. So I don't know if you guys saw that the people at the federal building, they just decided to board up the windows and so that they didn't get broken in. And the city issued an ordinance telling them, no, you need to take the boards off the windows. And it's like, okay, well, you can issue an order to make them take the boards off the windows, but you also won't send a dedicated police force out there to make sure people aren't assaulting people, starting, like they said, setting fires. It's just like my camera's about to die. Hold up. It's just like it's almost like they want that to happen. And I mean, Portland and Oregon, I mean, we know what happened back in 2020. So it's not like, it's not like the police there have a history of stopping mobs. They don't. They really don't. So, unfortunately.
The building entrance, creating both a fire risk and a direct threat to human safety. Didn't Braveheart try that? Yeah, in that one battle in the field. I don't think it was motor oil, but you know the point. It says that DHS was required to close the Portland facility for 3 weeks. And if it's closed, then they can't use it to deport in afuera these people. And even now that the facility is reopened, it must be boarded up to prevent further damage. Now, FPS is charged with protecting the building, and they are stretched to the point of collapse. The sustained violence and security risks have required FPS to provide 24/7 protection for the building, a task it is simply not resourced to accomplish. Now, to date, 115 FPF officers have deployed to Portland in order to maintain this operational tempo. Homeland has been forced to reassign members of the Homeland Security Investigations team, and now creating a Portland Special Response team to support FPS. And to date, 115 officers have been deployed. And while FPS has repeatedly attempted to contact the police for assistance, the Portland police are failing to respond to calls for assistance. And even when they have responded, their response has been delayed. They don't care. They're like, oh, we'll get there. Your building's on fire? Yeah, we'll get there soon enough. Plaintiffs' own declarations show the dire situation in Portland. So all those materials we just fast forwarded through, they're explaining them. Throughout September 2025, ICE officials and property have been the subject of regular and violent protests. Large groups gathering, many interfering with cars. During one protest, the Portland police concluded that they would not be able to address the call. Sorry, we can't make it. So based on the ongoing violence, Homeland transmitted a memo to the Department of War. They said, hey, can you guys help us with this? Said, we have to continue the protection of federal facilities. Please help. On the morning of September 27th, Trump cited the request and directed Hegseth, Secretary of Law, to now deploy. Then they contacted the Oregon officials and they said, well, we're going to federalize these troops. Now, the Oregon general rejected it. He said, no, you're not. He said, we're unwilling to lend our support. So you're not going to have our troops. So then the president said, well, okay, we are overruling you. We're the federal government, and federalize the Oregon National Guard members. Trump explained, he said, as I've determined, I am now activating these people to go deal with Antifa and the radical left lunatics. So those conclusions were consistent with.
See, that's what I said. I didn't pre-read this. So before the stream, I figured that's why the Antifa. They said they've been attacking viciously our law enforcement officers, men and women who are simply doing their job to protect federal property and enforcing federal immigration laws. But earlier in the summer. So right now, their argument is that there's domestic terrorists there. The FPS is lacking resources in order to stay there 24 hours to protect the area. And They're also saying they're trying to claim precedent for earlier this year when they sent everyone into California. I need to find her actual ruling and read that. Maybe he'll go over it.
The assessments that the president made earlier when talking about LA. He also found for those incidents that there were numerous incidences of violence and disorder, and all of this violence and disorder threatens the security of America. So then Hegseth issued a memo and mobilized 200 members of the National Guard for 60 days, and they did not like that. So then they sued. They said, you're violating this. You're using these federal agents for local law enforcement. You can't do that. They sought a TRO. The court said, yep, you violated this. So Trump, you cannot deploy any of these people. They say this is ridiculous. The Court of Appeals, just so you know, you have jurisdiction. It is now ripe for you to hear this. They issued a 31-page order, and we can now appeal this. Basically, consider it a preliminary injunction, accept our case, hear it, and rule in our favor. Now, you may also, if you don't like that, like if you don't think it's final enough for you, then you can exercise different mandamus jurisdiction and review it anyways. And they say, you better take this case because we're going to win. The Constitution authorizes Congress to provide for calling forth the militia. They passed law.
Found it, guys. Let's look. Let's look. That's what I was reading earlier. So I want to see what she said. I read up to here. So without this. So it says this memorandum authorized federal troops to temporarily protect U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. Are you guys seeing this? Yes, you are. Enforcement. Who are performing federal functions, including the enforcement of federal law and to protect federal property, opinions and order. Full force if necessary. I just want to see where exactly she disagrees and what standards. In deciding whether to grant a motion for TRO, courts look to substantially the same factors that apply to a court's decision on whether to issue a preliminary injunction. A plaintiff seeking a preliminary injunction must establish that it is likely to succeed on the merits, that it's likely to suffer irreparable harm in the absence of preliminary relief. So now we have to see what harm she's saying it's going to cause. That's the law enforcement resources. Let's see what she says about this. Plaintiffs present several witness declarations from local law enforcement officials detailing local and state law enforcement resources that stand ready to address unlawful conduct at the protest in Portland. It says all officers are trained in crowd management and First Amendment law. Crowd manage. That's a big one right here. I think she's gonna claim First Amendment violation. It says they have a rapid response team of around 50 officers that's specially trained in crowd management. Well, how come none of them have been there when the crowds have been wild? And then it says crowd management incident commanders work outside of their everyday police roles and are activated in that role based on the risk assessment of the event. These commanders are activated for large events such as the April's No Kings protest and drew approximately 40,000 people. I just want to read her. Okay, she addresses Portland now. ICE, what's it say? ICE has a facility located at whatever, I don't care. This facility encompasses approximately 1 block of Portland. So that's one thing she's claiming. It's just 1 block. Following federal officials' arrest of asylum seekers in Portland's immigration court in June, protests broke out around the ICE facility. Since June, guys. They've been out there since June. These protests were small, generally involving fewer than 100 people, but were concentrated at the ICE facility and disruptive to the facility. The ICE facility is within the police district. Unless a crowd management incident commander is activated, protests at the ICE facility are monitored by Central Precinct. So if the federal government is asking them to come help and they want those extra officers there, why won't they why wouldn't they just, what do they call them? These are they, why wouldn't they activate the crowd management officers or whatever they're calling them and go help instead of suing when they don't go activate these people when they're asking? Why wouldn't they do that? That doesn't make sense. It says on June 24, a protester was detained for assaulting a federal officer with a machete knife. The officer deployed his taser and recovered the protester's weapon without getting injured. Another protester shot officers with a paintball gun, and a third shined a laser in officers' eyes. All three were arrested by federal law enforcement and charged with assault on an officer. Another protester attempted to set a U.S. flag on fire in the driveway. On June 29th, a protester tampered with the card reader at the ICE facility and resisted arrest. So, okay, so these incidents were happening. We fast forward to August. Oh, so they did activate a crowd management commander from 4 p.m. to 7:30, having assessed potential risk of increased protest activity that did not end up occurring. They said they were generally limited to these amount of people. So she's making her case, trying to say it's not that violent, it's not that bad. On September 18th, the protesters increased in size to around 150 people, but there were no issues with federal property or personnel, and FPS did not request assistance. Federal law enforcement employed munitions to break up a crowd and reported PBB assaults on protesters, and one journalist known by a known agitator. There was no reported activity, however, against federal personnel. It's just crazy how it's just every day they're out there so often. Okay.
Laws empowering the president to do exactly that. And the president alone decides whether those conditions are met or not. And the president did decide that, explaining that Congress vested the decision of the National Guard into the president. In fact, this happened 200 years ago, nearly, saying President Madison activated the state militia and a member of the New York militia challenged the penalties. But the Supreme Court didn't want to entertain any of this. They said, what? You can't say that the president misjudged the danger. The law gives that power to the president. The president is the judge, okay? That is the law. The president is the judge, not the judge. Once the president judged that the exigency existed, his judgment was conclusive upon all other persons. That's why we have a president to make those very decisions. And that includes the courts. They're citing old case law from 1849, Supreme Court cases right there. You can't have a judge substitute their judgment for the president. If the Supreme Court thinks that, what Trump did was unconstitutional or something, there's a much stronger argument there that they could check that, but not a federal level district judge overriding the president. That's a whole separate issue, right? Just about what courts actually are equal and opposite to the president. So those same principles apply here. Now, they want to second guess the president's judgment. They can't do that. But as even they found in Los Angeles, the law makes clear that Congress has granted the authority to decide whether conditions are satisfied exclusively to the president. Can't have some other judge in Oregon make that decision. Now, notwithstanding this case, Martin, the panel that stayed the order that was enjoying the deployment in LA is available. It's highly deferential and it's available. You can read it. And other cases are explaining the same. The court made clear that the governor was appropriately vested with the discretion to determine whether an exigency occurred for the governor, and his decision was also conclusive. But the court did not second guess in a prior case that the governor's decision was unjustified, right? So the court won't even substitute their judgment in for certain governors. Now, even if some judicial review is permitted, at minimum, they must give a great level of deference because they don't have the facts. attacks. And the plaintiff's only path to judicial review in this case is a Hail Mary pass, and it rarely succeeds. They're trying to invoke the APA, another provision that we've seen a lot of here, historically speaking, from the Democrats that try to stop whatever Trump is doing. Now, they cannot satisfy these demands. In the weeks leading up to this, there were violent groups. They were just obstructing federal law enforcement, so our standards have been met. Outside the facility, there's pepper spray, rocks, bricks, incendiary devices. Been going on day after day, night after night. The cops can't get their hands around it. Individuals working inside the facility and outside were ducks.
So basically, the judge is trying to say people were out there, but they were small crowds, and there were a few events of violence, but those people were arrested. But overall, the judge is saying that it was not violent, or that it was a peaceful protest.
They're under attack every night. So these
That's kinda how I'm
conditions
reading it.
amply support the president's judgment that they can deploy the National Guard. And the president further explains these are acts of violence. They are directly inhibiting the execution of federal law. So Congress enacted all of this in response to the Whiskey Rebellion, which was a protest against a specific tax. They weren't trying to overthrow the government as a whole. They were just rejecting lawful authority. And dictionaries explain what a rebellion is. And it reflects, the historical context. It's opposition to government authority. So the Whiskey Rebellion was an opposition to a tax, and that was a rebellion, meaning the president can do the same thing. Yeah, so here, now in issuing its injunction, the district court substituted its own judgment for that of the president and failed to engage in the review. You can't, Judge Immergut, substitute your opinion for the president's just because you're unhappy with the deportations or whatever. Put simply, the district court built its entire decision around a single premise, quote, that the protests were small and uneventful. Okay, that was her opinion. Well, it's your opinion. You're not the president when the president issued his decision. But the district court itself identified several incidents, and there's ample evidence that the violence was much more than just small or uneventful. In fact, their own evidence shows how dire it is. Throughout September 2025 this year, ICE officials and property were the subject of regular attacks, and they're kind of citing all of these attachments and exhibits. Multiple citizens called the Portland police complaining about the mob. One person called the Portland police useless. Then a mob of 50 to 60 protesters were surrounding everybody, flashing lights, and it just goes on and on. On the same day, they had to respond to a bomb threat. These people are maniacs. Now, this is far from a categorically different from violent incidents. The judge is saying this, no, it's not big a deal, and you can just kind of gloss over it, but it is the same. The district court erred by focusing only on the situation in Portland and not elsewhere. The president was well within his discretion to consider this months-long unrest throughout Portland, multiple locations, and although the violence is somewhat abated, it's because we've had a bigger show of force, saying the president is not required to deploy these people nationwide, and he can decide where to apportion resources. So events outside Portland, like a recent shooting in Dallas and other things, are showing the context, and enforcement of the law is necessarily a national endeavor. It's a resource-intensive mission, and we got to move people around as necessary. Now, the rest of their claims fail as well. Federalizing the National Guard is not a violation of the 10th Amendment. We have the authority to do that pursuant to Congress, which has the power to provide for calling forth a militia. So how is it not in there that the federal government can do that? So meaning it's a right that's reserved to the states. That doesn't make any sense. So you should grant a stay that we've got to protect our personnel and our property. On the other side,
I don't think there was a place around that where they, this happened, and I don't think there's a place where they have stopped him from actually sending the guard in. I think California just limited how many they could have in there, but I feel like this case is just another one of those, the Democrats are trying to stop something, and then it's going to go to the Supreme Court and get passed through, because a lot of these injunctions are made on powers that are reserved for the president only.
they don't need any relief. All we're doing is going to secure the premises. Like there's no other harm to them other than having more troops on the streets. So what are they so upset about? Is it going to be that the actual law will be enforced and that deportations will continue? We think so. So they can only speculate that emergencies and unrest might occur, but it's all speculation. We're actually going to have more troops. We're going to have more safety. Their argument is that the more people you bring in, the more agitation your troops are creating. Yeah, I guess you're agitating the criminals and the illegal aliens. So don't want to agitate them or else they'll burn your buildings down. In conclusion, signed by J. Kane Day immediately after.
Yeah, I don't get how it could be an agitation. I feel like it would keep more peace to have more officers around, because what are they going to come and just start attacking officers then at that point? Because then it proves their point. But if they get there and they actually don't attack officers, then everything should be peaceful. And they can scream at them all day if they want. I mean, but with that, since this is the Department of Justice, I wanted to listen to Pam Bondi's opening speech today.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member Durbin, and every member. Grateful for the opportunity to testify in front of you today. First, please join me in remembering, as you said, Chairman Grassley, all the Jewish people who lost their lives in the October 7th
Today is October
attacks
7th.
2 years
We should
ago
remember them
today.
as well.
Also, please let's pray for all the hostages and the families of all of those individuals. They are a critical reminder of our central mission here at the Department of Justice, protecting the safety and security of the American people. That is why, even when the government is otherwise shut down because of the Democrats, the department's law enforcement officers and prosecutors are hard at work fighting crime, keeping our streets safe, and protecting you from the threats, foreign and domestic. When I was confirmed as the 87th Attorney General of the United States, I took office with two main goals: to end the weaponization of justice and return the department to its core mission of fighting violent crime. As to ending the weaponization of justice, we learned that former FBI secretly investigated you and your colleagues. Why? They wanted to take President Trump off the playing field. They were playing politics with law enforcement powers and will go down as a historic betrayal of public trust. This is the kind of conduct that shatters the American people's faith in our law enforcement system. We will work to earn that back every single day. We are returning to our core mission of fighting real crime. While there is more work to do, I believe in 8 short months, we have made tremendous progress towards those ends. Our federal surges in Washington, D.C. and Memphis are a perfect example of how the Department of Justice should operate. We created strong partnerships with local leadership, working hand in hand with both cities to send resources where they were needed most. The results speak for themselves. We have made more than 3,800 arrests here in Washington while seizing more than 365 illegal guns. In Memphis, we have already made more than 300 arrests and close to 80 illegal guns in just a week. We are replicating that tough on crime approach throughout this country. Under the leadership of Director Kash Patel, the FBI is doing outstanding investigative work to keep American people safe. The FBI just conducted a months-long operation called Summer Heat, which resulted in over 8,600 arrests from June to September, more than...
Let's look at this one, because apparently her and this senator kind of got into it.
Before they deployed National Guard troops to cities in the United States?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House.
You won't even say whether you talked to the White House about this?
I am not going to discuss any internal conversations with the White House with you, Chair.
Sometimes these
Ranking Member.
meetings
I
are like
noticed that.
insufferable
What's
because
the
these
secret?
people
Why do you want to keep this secret? The American people don't know.
they
the
don't let each other
rationale
answer
behind the
questions.
deployment of
The other person will either grandstand or say the same thing over and over to the same question.
National Guard
And then they
troops in
start
my
getting
state.
heated with each other.
The word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois. What's the rationale for that?
Yeah, Chairman, as you shut down the government, you voted to shut down the government, and you're sitting here, our law enforcement officers aren't being paid. They're out there working to protect you. I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
I've been on this committee for more than 20 years. That's the kind of testimony you expect from this administration. A simple question as to whether or not that a legal rationale for deploying National Guard troops becomes grounds for a personal attack. I think it's a legitimate question. It's my responsibility.
I mean, it is. I guess it's a legitimate question, but it's also legitimate that you're a senator and your state is there's constant crime in Illinois, and especially in Chicago. Like he himself wouldn't go walk down O Block 63rd, 64. He wouldn't go walk down those streets. He'd get assaulted immediately. He would need bodyguards. He'd need police. So to sit there and act like that the city of Chicago is so safe is absolutely insane. These people won't go to these areas they're saying are being accosted because they're black and brown. They don't even go to those areas. Why? Because they know they'll be robbed or worse.
She refuses to answer as to whether she had any conversation with the White House about deploying national troops to my state. That's an indication, I'm afraid, where we are politically in this place. Let me ask you another question. I want to, if you will, hold on a second. Make sure I got the right page of facts here. You testified
Let's see
under
what he's
oath
gonna
when
say in
you
a
last before this committee that before your appointment to Attorney General, you had served as a representative of some sort for the royal family of Qatar. There was an issue that came before you in May when President Trump accepted a $400 million luxury jet from the royal family of Qatar for temporary use as Air Force One before it's permanently gifted to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation. The Constitution unequivocally bestows on Congress the power to control whether any officer of the United States, including the President, may accept a gift, quote, from any king, prince, or foreign state, end of quote. And this
Yeah, I
gift
was
clearly
unsure about
violates the statutory regime enacted by Congress.
And what
You've
law?
refused to answer a letter I sent to you
I wish he would state the exact law so I could look it up, but I have no idea.
5 months ago, asking the legal rationale you relied on to advise President Trump to accept this unprecedented gift from your former legal client. Can you make a promise today that you will disclose that?
Disclose what, ranking member?
That's what I was trying to.
I assume there was a letter or some sort of statement from your office to the White House to advise them that you felt it was permissible?
First, to address my role with Qatar, as I addressed with you during my confirmation hearing, I disclosed it in my SJQ. In private practice, I worked for Qatar for anti-human trafficking for the World Cup. That was my only involvement, and I made that very clear, and I'm very proud of everything I've done with anti-human trafficking. Obviously, in preparing any advice for the president on
So if it's on video, I bet we could go back and find it. So if she told him that, why is he trying to use? It's kind of like he's trying to make like a quid pro quo situation, even though he doesn't have the evidence of it. So he's questioning her about it, even though they did question her about it before she was confirmed. So to bring that back up to make a weird connection between Trump and the plane without any evidence, especially in an official proceeding like this, is a little weird. And he didn't even name the law that Congress enacted that Trump was supposedly breaking at that point. So like that, I wish he would have done that so we could all sit here and maybe go read it so we can maybe agree with him. But he didn't even cite a law. He just said Congress said it's not okay. So is that the law?
a jet or anything else, we consult with the Office of Legal Counsel. The confidentiality applies to their input as well. And Chairman, if you would approve and vote to approve, as Chairman Grassley said, excuse me, Ranking Member, as Chairman Grassley said, my employees, we would answer your letters a lot faster, yet you're stalling them at every stop. And to go back to your previous question, your city has a murder rate 5 times higher than New York's. 571 homicides last year. If you were
571 homicides in 1 year. There's 365 days. They had more than one person get not just die, get murdered in 1 year. And they're sitting there and be like, nothing to see here. It's fine. Things are going down. So they've been saying crime's been going down. So what did it go down from? Like 600, 700, 1,000? And it was still at 500 plus last year. That's insane. That's nowhere near okay.
serious about protecting your people, you would be asking this administration for help. You're saying that we're coming into your state and your city. We're there to help make America safe and Illinois safe, whether or not you want to.
If you think your child may have autism, it's important to act quickly. At Action Behavior Centers, we want to reduce barriers to diagnostic.
I believe cutting federal grant programs to law enforcement in my state and across the nation does not make us any safer, and you've done just that. You've supplanted that decision by sending in National Guard troops to California and other places. That is a situation where the governors have not asked for that help. If you truly
you guys
wanted
just
to
saw
do
right
this
there,
on-
he did not address what she said about the murders. He's like he's basically saying that since we didn't get federal grants, blah, 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 this is why there's murders. That's okay. Interesting.
on a bipartisan
I wonder how much money the federal government has actually giving them and what they've done with it. Because we do know it is a sanctuary city. So
basis. You wouldn't defy a governor, you would work with them. I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to work with this administration. But cutting these grants to law enforcement does not make us any stronger as a nation or give us the tools we need to reduce crime in Chicago. Now, I'd just like to ask you, when it came to this Cutter situation, did you consult with the ethics office in the Department of Justice before making your decision on this gift of a jet?
Chairman, I didn't gift a jet to anyone. My Office of Legal Counsel provides confidential advice to the President, to the White House, period. And you're conflating two issues. Cutting grants, I was very clear about what grants we've cut and what grants we haven't, only 7%. And if you have a grant in Illinois that you think that I've cut that is not protecting law enforcement officers or your people, you personally call me and I will work with you to turn that grant back on. I think many of the Democrats here can tell you, I have worked with them to turn grants back on. There's an appeal process. Tell me a specific grant that I have turned off in Illinois that would help law enforcement, and I will work with you. But you have not done that.
Did you
And
take a
again,
look? Did you take a
the
look?
National Guard is on the way right now as we speak. Oh, by the way, so is Director Patel and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. You're sitting here grilling me, and they're on their way to Chicago to keep your state safe.
Madam Attorney General, it's my job to grill you. Investigation of your agency
job to work
is part of
with
my
her.
responsibility and this committee.
unless
You
this
may
is
not
like
like
one
the
of those
experience, but others have
judicial
weathered the storm
committees, then he
and answered questions in a
does have a
respectful manner.
job to
Can you
grill
tell me
her.
the grants,
Yes.
ranking member, please?
Take a look at the president's budget on HIDA grants. What happens to it in his proposed budget?
I'd be glad to meet with you on the
It's
grants.
cut by 1/3 from $300 million to 196. That's one example of a grant that works, and your administration has suggested cutting it in the budget lies ahead. I want to ask you about items in a letter I sent you in July that you have not answered. In February, you made a public claim that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now for review, end of quote. You then produced
Yeah, she wholeheartedly messed up with the. Yeah, it's insane. It's like they don't even. It's like they're not even sitting there trying to get down to anything. They're just sitting there yelling at each other when it's supposed to be a serious meeting. Like apparently, it's so if it's an ethics scandal, so this is a committee on ethics, and probably it could be the ethics community. I should have looked that up first. But yeah, you're right. A lot of these meetings go like that because I watch them because I want to see what's actually going on, and that's why when they go on and they're just sitting there blaming each other, oh, it's the Democrats' fault for the shutdown, or it's the Republicans' fault. No, it's all of them because they're just BSing. So you're right about that, but still got to watch. Someone has to watch. I will.
already public information and no client list at a major media event hosted at the White House. Attorney General Bondi, why did you publicly claim to have the Epstein client list waiting for your review and then produce nothing relevant to that claim?
Oh, but yeah, before I was reading your comment. Yeah, I was actually upset with Pan Bondi earlier in the year because I just thought she was being wildly incompetent and not coming out and being a strong leader of the department, especially with the Epstein files and how, but like you're saying, it's a lot of it's just propaganda.
Senator Durbin,
They don't want us
Senator
to
Durbin,
actually look
if
into
you
what
listen to my
they're doing.
entire clip on that, I said I had not reviewed it yet, that it was sitting on my desk along with the JFK files, the Martin Luther King files, and I said I had not yet reviewed it. And if you see our memo on Epstein, you will see, excuse me.
I don't know. She was making it really seem. You wonder why. What do you say? You wonder why they never show the list, or you have no personal knowledge of people doing jail time because it's not real life. Literally, no one ever goes to jail for this stuff. That was the crazy thing last year, where people actually started to go to jail for this stuff, and then now it's might actually start going to jail for more stuff this year. So maybe that's a turnaround. Maybe the Democrats last year just created a precedent for now people really will start going to jail for this stuff. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. But it's hopeful people will start going to jail for what they're doing to this country. Left, right, center. If you're not in that position of power to actually help the country, what are you doing there? You're just collecting a check and making friends or enemies, whatever they do all day. I don't even think they work every day like us, and they make way more than us.
Our memo on Epstein clearly points out that there was no client list, our July 6th memo. You also didn't let me respond to the HIDA question. The budget transfers $196 million for high-intensity drug trafficking areas to the Office of Justice Programs, OJP. The Justice Department will continue to administer those grants.
The only one I know was Michael Cohen, but then he got pardoned. So that's really it. And then they gave Trump a mugshot like he went to jail or something. But that doesn't make sense to me either. Because why would, yeah. Like the government just seems like they're going to do whatever they want. And either way, we're the cannon fodder. And then they start to act like they care and say they care around elections. I mean, how would I know that? How would I see him in jail? That's like if I went to jail and then someone didn't see me and I'd be like, well, did you see me go to jail? I mean, I could look up the court cases
under OJP
and the
in
ruling.
2026.
That would help you, but
Going back to the Epstein files, according to another whistleblower
very easy to
who made
figure
a
out if
protected
anyone's
disclosure to
exactly
my
in
office,
jail. How are you?
you pushed the FBI to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records on an arbitrarily short deadline in March, and the FBI was directed to flag any documents that mentioned President Trump. Nothing came of that review until July, when DOJ and FBI released an unsigned memo stating, quote, "there's no incriminating client list." Why was the July 7th memo unsigned?
The July 7th memo came from the FBI and the Department of Justice. Director Patel answered those questions very clear. And, you know, Senator Durbin, I find it very interesting that you refused repeated Republican requests to release the Epstein flight logs in 2023 and 2024. You fought that. Did you take money from Reid Hoffman, campaign donations, who was a huge Epstein friend? Why did you
But that's
fight
why we're
years?
trying to figure it out
Why
ourselves.
did you fight to not disclose the flight logs, Senator Durbin?
I can tell you,
I
I
quite
did not
literally just said
refuse.
I
One of the
was
senators
very
here
upset with Pam Bondi this year, so it's not like I'm taking either one of these people's sides. I'm just trying to figure it out. And like they're both complicit in my opinion, because she's asking him, why didn't you release it? I'll rewind it. And he's asking her, why haven't you released it? So it's like, excuse me, both of you, why haven't you released it? It's so
I can tell you, I
dumb.
did not refuse. One of the senators here wished to produce those logs, and I asked her to put it in writing, and she never did.
Yeah, I think Senator Blackburn would quarrel with you on that. But
I
that's
will
up to the
quarrel
two
with
of
you as to Reid, somebody that you mentioned I never heard of.
Reid Hoffman.
So who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you, Senator.
Eventually, you're going to have to answer for your conduct in this. You won't do it today, but eventually you will. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
I got to
Mr.
interject
Chairman?
something here.
Mr.
before I
Chairman.
get to him.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, if there's one AI site builder you need to meet, it's this dope tech from Wix.
Why would you be upset with an actor?
Since
These people
Senator
make
Durbin
decisions every
referred
day
to
that
me,
can mess up
I
our
would
lives.
really appreciate the
So yeah,
opportunity to
I will
correct the
try and be
record.
upset
Because
and
Senator Durbin
speak out
knows
when I am
I
upset about it.
repeatedly asked for those flight
Basically, what you're saying right here, these people are all fake. It's all fake. They're lies. So therefore, do nothing, say nothing, don't get upset. No, someone has to do something and say something.
I brought up the subpoena. You even shut down the committee because you didn't.
Just okay. This is what's annoying because you quite literally just said you were quite literally just saying that. Hold on, let me read it because I don't want to. You said, have they all lied? Oh, this is just annoying. They make no decisions. It's all scripted. Then who runs the government? Like you were just asking me, have you seen someone in jail? Do you have evidence? Well, what evidence do you have that it's scripted or this or that? Like, so it's all subjective. It's like, what are you going to do? Complain that it's all scripted or watch it and try and speak out? I'd rather watch and speak out than sit there and complain, oh, it's scripted and do nothing.
Want that, and you know I submitted that in writing, and you continue to misrepresent that, and I am not going to let that record stand.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Senator Durbin.
I just want to make it clear that the reason the committee business ended was that your side invoked the 2-hour rule. Point number 2 is I asked you if you wanted any documents like flight logs to put it in writing. You never did.
Yes, sir, I did, and your staff knows that I did.
No,
We'll submit, once again,
send me a copy of
the
that,
information to you. We've done that several times, but we'll be happy to, once again, send it to you. I think your staff doesn't show that to you.
Well, as I started to say about the emolument clause and Democrats bringing that up in regard to Qatar, back in March of 2016, they didn't care anything about my bringing up the emolument clause in regard. I wrote to the Obama
These people
Justice
are so
Department.
old.
That letter was based on.
Like, have you noticed that a lot of these people are just so old, and there's so much wrong with this country. I think there needs to be different term limits and different ways to get people out of office because these people aren't doing a damn thing.
Secretary Clinton's 2009 to 2013
But we're gonna finish this
financial
off and then I'm gonna hop
disclosures
off.
when she was Secretary of State.
So I have to go to
Those
work.
disclosures showed that her husband participated in at least 62 events with foreign states. Some of those were speaking events with connections to foreign governments, and some speaking events were financially supported by foreign governments. 2 examples, Bill Clinton received hundreds of thousands of dollars for appearance sponsored by Middle Eastern governments. Bill Clinton also received $200,000 for a speech connected to the Chinese government. And I don't recall getting any help from my Democrat colleagues on that investigation. Senator Graham.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. So I want to make sure I got this clear. If a Democrat or a Republican senator has a problem,
I mean, I
with a
100%
grant that's
see
been
it.
canceled
That's
or
not the
reduced,
point I
it
was
would be-
making to you.
Have you ever wanted to see your home from?
The point is, you see it. What are you going to do? That's what I'm saying. They're so old. He wouldn't even. He could barely even get the sentence out. Like, what the heck? He was literally stumbling so bad to get that sentence out, and he's reading from a card. Wild. I guess we can watch more of it.
Suppose that I'm appointed special counsel at the Department of Justice, and I go to the telecommunication companies, the phone companies. Let's single out AT&T, and I say, look, I know you're busy.
This meeting was 5
I want to
hours.
see the
They sat here for
copy of the
5
phone
hours, and I
records of the
don't know what
sitting
they got
United
accomplished.
States Senator.
Probably not.
They're not going to just give
The
them to me,
government's still
are they?
closed. So
No, Senator, of course not.
In fact, they're probably going to ask me what planet I
Surprised
just
they even have this
parachuted
meeting
in
today.
from, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
They're going to tell me to come back with a subpoena, aren't they?
Are they still getting
Yes, Senator.
paid?
Okay. What do I have to show in that subpoena to get those phone records of a sitting? Did I mention it was a sitting United States Senator? I can't remember. What do I have to show to get the phone records of a sitting United States
Wow,
Senator?
they're still getting paid.
Yes, Senator, there were actually 8
And they-
sitting United States
Yeah, I
Senator,
heard that.
and you would have to have
And she had
costs.
just said that the cops aren't getting paid. So ICE and other people aren't getting paid, but these people are getting paid to sit here and talk in circles. That's insane. That's insane. I don't even want to give them the time of day anymore at that point. Like, genuinely. Oh, man. But I will be keeping up with the appeal of the Portland situation to see where it goes. It's probably gonna. Well, they're at the circuit now. So after that, I believe it goes to the Supreme Court if they don't strike it down right there. Which more than likely they will not strike it down right there, and it will go to the Supreme Court and get strike down. But I will keep you guys. No essential government stops getting paid, but the rich still gets the money. I know it's sad how that works, man. I don't really get it, but I'm gonna be doing some research. I mean, there's no research to be done. I mean, they're not gonna agree on the budget. One side's gonna have to budge, so we're gonna see who it is. I think they're all doing this for political stunts right now because the midterms are coming, so everyone's trying to act like they know everything and that one side is wrong or the other right now because the midterms are coming in. After the midterms, I think things will start happening, but we'll see. It could get even worse after the midterms because who knows what's going to happen. But again, I know this one was a little boring because we're just reading court cases and watching these freaking idiots talk, but it's good to point out how weird it looks and how performative it looks when they're talking to each other like this. You know, one guy saying, "Oh, you never sent me documents." One for yes, I did, and it's just like, But with that, thank you guys for tuning in. I will keep us updated on this court case and probably any other thing that's really important right now to share. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Thank you for tuning in the Street News Network. See ya.